Mom, Dad, you should shop Amazon for back to school and save some money. See, I'm currently obsessed with superheroes and need all the superhero stuff. Superhero lunchbox, superhero backpack. But next year, it'll be something else. Maybe dinosaurs? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. But I can tell you not to spend a fortune and shop low prices for school on Amazon. Okay, good chat. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
You're making it happen. You're coming in hot. Hotter than hot. Hotter than the surface of the sun? Even hotter than the metal part of your seatbelt. Put it on ice. With Dunkin' Iced. Like the new brown sugar cream cold brew or the new mango pineapple Dunkin' Refreshers. Whew. America runs on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you in part by the Needle Kuda Law Firm, guidance that moves lives forward.
Welcome to another episode of Divorce Doesn't Suck. I'm Wendy Sloan, and I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Herrold. And this episode is brought to you by the Needle Kuda, guidance that moves lives forward. Today, our second part of our 12-part series, Mapping Your New Path Forward with attorney Melissa Needle, partner at the Westport, Connecticut-based law firm Needle Kuda. We are focusing today on what actually is a divorce. Welcome back, Melissa. And hi, Daniel.
Hello, it's so good to be here.
Hi, Melissa. It's good to see you again.
You too, guys. Always a pleasure to sit and chat with the two of you.
All right, so we're going to talk about what really is a divorce. What does that mean? I mean, it's so emotional to navigate this, and also financially, all aspects of it. Break it down for us. Tell us what it is all about.
Okay, so I recognize that when I have new clients come into my office for the first time, it's very emotional. So what I try to do is I dumb down the conversation, and I don't dumb it down because I don't respect my client's intellect or anything like that, but I recognize how emotional, how upsetting, how difficult it could be sitting across a desk from a divorce lawyer for the first time. So I want to make sure that when they leave my office, they are armed with information that they can remember and understand. And so the first time I talk to my clients, I generally tell them, depending on the facts and circumstances, that there are 3 buckets that they need to think about. The first bucket, and the most important bucket, is the kid bucket. And in that bucket, we talk about legal custody and physical custody. The second bucket is the assets. How do we divide the assets of the marriage? And sometimes, what are the assets of the marriage? And the third bucket is how do we divide the income of the marriage? And that's really a function of alimony and child support. So I'm a visual person. I'm a visual learner. So I like to break down the information into different buckets. And I think that really sort of brings it down to the nuts and bolts and basics. And I do that so that when my client leaves the office, they will be able to recount the information that was given to them in our consultation.
So
I think
Melissa,
that's very specific.
Yeah, and we want to drill down on all 3 of those topics. Okay. I want to go back up to I did a little bit of my research, believe it or not. And I'm trying to really look at the history of divorce. And, I think, I'd love it if you could educate us a little bit, because I think, pre-Ronald Reagan, who was the first to introduce the no-fault divorce bill in California, which that changed didn't that change? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it really changed the divorce as we know it, or as they knew it at the time, because back then, before the no-fault divorces, there had to be certain conditions in which you could even file for a divorce, right? And so,
yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of people come into my office and they say, well, this is a no-fault divorce state, and they don't really understand what that means. No-fault divorce means that you don't need a reason for the court to have jurisdiction or the ability to enter a judgment of divorce. Okay, so you don't have to prove that a spouse abandoned another spouse, or that they were emotionally cruel, or that adultery was committed. If you are in a fault divorce state, then you need to prove something prior to even having the ability to have the court entertain a divorce. No fault divorce simply means you can get divorced for any reason. If you don't like the way your spouse brushes his teeth or her teeth, you can get a divorce. It doesn't make a difference. As long as you claim that the marriage has broken down irretrievably and there's no hope of reconciliation, then the court has the jurisdiction to enter a judgment of divorce. However, that being said, many statutes in many states have different factors that the courts rely on to determine what is equitable, what is fair, how do we divide the assets, how do we determine the right amount of alimony, determine where the kids should be. And one of the factors in many state statutes is the cause for the breakdown of the marriage. And to me, that means fault. So it is a factor, one of probably 15 or 16 different factors, depending on what state you're in, that the court may consider when determining how the equitable order should be entered. So if a spouse has done something that is egregious or is the cause for the breakdown of the marriage, then the court very well may take that into consideration.
So it's kind of like ordering. It's kind of like ordering a steak medium rare, but medium rare plus. So the medium rare is no fault, any reason, but there are some conditions, as you're saying, in some states where it's still a no fault, but there's maybe a little bit of an addendum with some conditions, right?
Yeah. So you can get a divorce for any reason in a no fault state. Okay. There really you don't have to plead or make a claim of any reason. But the cause for the breakdown of the marriage is something the court may consider when trying to figure out who gets what.
Divisions. Got it.
Okay, so it's not something we completely ignore. It is something that's important. It's important to communicate to your divorce lawyer if you feel that, the marriage broke down for a certain reason. And I can promise you, in any case, a lawyer will ask, do you believe that the marriage has broken down irretrievably? And do you believe you contributed to the breakdown? Do you believe your spouse contributed to the breakdown? What contributions did you make, and what contributions did your spouse make to the breakdown? These are things that people should think about when they go and see a divorce lawyer, because it is very helpful information in understanding the dynamics in the family.
That makes sense.
Let's break down the three buckets of divorce. Let's start with kids, the legal and physical.
Okay. So there's a big difference between legal and physical custody, and a lot of people get very concerned over legal custody. Legal custody is who gets to make the major decisions that will impact your children, such as what doctors will treat them, what schools will they go to. A lot of people do not have legal custody issues. So if, for example, you have two children, one child's in 7th grade, one child's in 9th grade, they've been going to the same schools, in the same school system, they don't have any significant educational challenges, they're healthy children, legal custody issues are not really going to be a big issue in that divorce case. So that is perhaps less important than physical custody. And physical custody is really a function of where will the children be at any given time. It's basically the access schedule, what used to be known as the visitation schedule. That's a little politically incorrect to call time with one parent a visit. So we now say the schedule of access. What days will the kids be at mom's house? What day will the kids be at dad's house? And that, to me, is a much more challenging hurdle than the legal custody in most cases, not in every case. But, it's difficult when you're going through a divorce to think that there are going to be days and nights where you're not going to see your kids because they're going to be with their other parent. And, that is an emotionally difficult thing to accept, but it is a reality. And that's something that, especially in initial consultation, I think it's really important to bring up so that your client's expectations are managed appropriately. So that's what I talk about in terms of the kid bucket, what you need to start thinking about. Think about, is legal custody going to be an issue based on the challenges that your children have? And if not, what will the access schedule be? What is best for the kids? How much time will they spend between households? Where will each parent live? Because that is also an important factor in trying to come up with an appropriate schedule. So I like to mention that so that people can start wrapping their minds around that, because that can be very emotionally challenging.
And
Because we
Melissa,
all know our kids are so important to us.
at what point do the kids play a factor into what they want? Do the courts factor in? Probably, I would assume maybe in a high conflict divorce, the kids start to play a role, at least in the court's determination of how that's going to be negotiated. And I assume this is up to the age of 18, right? Up to the age of, is this all determined?
It's different in different states. The age of majority is different in different states. It's usually either 18 or 21, unless the child has special needs, and then it might be a little bit older. And that's a really, really good question. At what age do the children's wants and desires come into play? Typically, in the custody statutes, the children's wants and desires is one factor that the courts may consider when trying to determine what's best for the child or children. And whether or not they weigh that factor significantly really depends on the maturity level of the child. You can have a 14-year-old who is very wise, very sophisticated, understands the dynamics of the family, is articulate, and might be in a better position than a 14-year-old who maybe is immature and doesn't want to be involved and doesn't want his voice to be heard and just wants to be told what to do and where to go. So there is no specific age by which the court will say if you're 14 or 16, period. But I will tell you, if you have a older teenager, it is sometimes difficult to tell that teenager, you must go, you have to go. And I will often say to clients that if you force a child to, especially a teenager, to do something they don't want to do, then you're setting up a relationship that will fail. So if I'm representing a client who is demanding that their 16-year-old come and visit, I will say to them, be careful what you wish for, because you need to really think about what it is, because you might physically be with that child, but the connection and the relationship might be negatively impacted by that. So, there's no hard, fast rules. But I think that depending on the child, listening to what it is they want to do is very important.
Well, what if you have a court order that says the kids have to go to the mom or the dad, this specific day, and then the teenager doesn't want to go, but you have an order and then the kid doesn't go. So then what happens?
Yeah, it can be a real mess when that happens. And, sometimes kids have attorneys that represent them. And the attorneys can voice the child's wants and desires. And if that's the situation, I think it's critical for a child to have an attorney so that the court can hear directly from the child rather than from each of the parents who are obviously volleying for their respective positions. If there, isn't a attorney for a child, then you can file a motion with the court, articulating what's going on within the family dynamic. And if you don't want to file a motion, then my advice would be, at least write an email to your spouse saying, Johnny doesn't want to go to see you. I don't think it's a good idea to push him. I'm doing everything that I can, but I can't physically force them to go. Do you have any suggestions? And that way, at least you cover yourself and you show that you're engaged and you're trying to comply with a court order. But if you can't do it, you can't do it.
I think
Really
you had
good
a really
advice.
good point of advice. I remember when I was going through my divorce, one of my daughters was in college, and I had one that was a junior in high school, the other that was a freshman. And both of them, I think, were driving age. And when I sat down with my ex-wife, we were like, they don't want 2 bedrooms that they're having to switch back and forth. And so we made the decision that, my ex kept the house until it was sold. They were going to stay with mom, have 1 bedroom. And then we just picked a couple of nights every week where they'd come over and have dinner with dad in his apartment. And because we just didn't want to create and to your point, a 16 or 18-year-old, they're busy. It's, it's funny. I remember, and I was okay with them canceling. They'd cancel on occasions. And I remember one time I got a little bit down because they canceled on me again. And I texted my ex and I was saying I was a little bit frustrated. And she said, you know what, Daniel? I hardly see them here at the house.
Yeah.
We don't sit around and have dinner. They're out doing their own things. And so I think that if you come in, you're trying to disrupt kind of the normalcy that they're experiencing in their lives, which divorce does, whether you like it or not. But trying to create as much of that normalcy, I think, is really important for the sake of your kids, even in those teenage years.
I mean, it's a natural progression for teenagers to start to drift from their parents and exert their independence. So you can't think just because you're divorced that the children or divorcing, that teenagers in particular are going to say, okay, well, I'll ditch my friends and I'll go hang out with you, mom, or you, dad. I mean, that's just not realistic. And I think the parents that really force it really creates conflict within the family dynamic and engages the children in the dynamic. As parents, you want your children to be independent. And it's those years that's really teaching them that they can survive and be happy on their own with their friends, and to pull them back from that, can really result in resentment, not from your ex-spouse, but from the kids themselves. So you have to really keep that in mind if your kids are that age.
Yeah.
Boy, I wish you guys were around when this was going on with me, because I had the total opposite of Daniel. I was forced to make my kids go. And I wasn't given at that point in my divorce good advice about that. I was forced to make them Didn't matter what my kids were saying. So it was the total opposite of your relationship with your ex-wife, Daniel, unfortunately, in my situation. And my kids were voicing that they didn't want to go, and nobody cared. They made me force them to go. I think this is really good advice for people to hear, both sides, both mom and dads, to hear this.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the rest of it.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
This
let's
is
talk
tough
about the
stuff. This
division
is
of
tough stuff,
assets.
by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the division of assets is tough, right? Because a lot of times, like I'm thinking about my marriage. I mean, my ex-wife, played the role of managing the finances, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and through most of our marriage, and so she handled the books, and I had honestly no idea, probably where money was spent. I mean, to my fault. And so there's a lot of cases where someone plays that role, the other person doesn't. And so there has to be kind of a discovery process, right, Melissa, to kind of figure out what are the assets.
Yeah, I mean, so within the asset bucket, there's, the phase of trying to discover what assets exist. And it's not uncommon that there is one spouse who is more financially aware of the family's financial landscape than the other. Because one spouse maybe is, busy with the kids and raising the kids, and the other spouse is paying the bills, or one spouse is out working and the other spouse is, managing the finances. Whatever the dynamic is, it is not unusual for one spouse to have no idea. And I always tell clients who tell me they have no idea, they're always so embarrassed. I should know, I should have known. And I say to them, look, you didn't know that you were going to end up in this office, sitting in this chair across from me. Don't beat yourself up. You
Right.
conquered and divided, and you each had different responsibilities, and that's okay. And I try to reassure him that him or her, that if you hire a divorce lawyer who knows what they're doing, one of our primary tasks is to understand what assets are in the marital estate. And I know at Needle Cuda, we are very good at doing that. We take pride in doing that. We have a lot of people in this office who have a lot of experience doing that. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it isn't. And different people have different situations. Some people, might have a small family business. Some people might have some sort of trust. Some people are just W-2 employees and it's easy.
Mhm.
But all sorts of different dynamics. And if you hire a lawyer who really is sophisticated and experienced, you can have a level of comfort that all of the assets will be discovered. And sometimes this is the most difficult part of the divorce process, because as a client, sometimes you're not doing anything. It's
Right.
the lawyers that are getting the information, that are reviewing the information. Once you review the information, you might need more information. So it takes time. It's a process. It's not just an event that happens. And sometimes that can be difficult for the clients because they're sitting back and they're not doing anything. Once we know what assets exist and are in that bucket, then we try to figure out who's going to get what. And, every case is different. It depends. Do you want to stay in the house? Do you want to sell the house? Do you want retirement assets? Is there a family business? Will the value of the family business go in one spouse's column? So, these are the types of things. Once we uncover what the assets are, what we do here at Needle Cuda is we sit down with our clients and we talk to them. What are your goals? What do you envision? What's important to you? And from that conversation, or it's a series of conversations, we will then try to figure out which assets we will request go to our respective client and why we think that should happen. And so that's really how the asset bucket works.
And it's not just assets too. It's identifying all the liabilities that are part of the marriage too, right? So the mortgage, the credit card debt, other types of maybe liens, anything. What if there's something? I mean, I've heard of where assets have been hidden, maybe throughout the entire marriage. What about liabilities that are hidden too? Someone has, their own personal credit card with a $50,000 balance. I mean, how are those factored in? And does that give someone maybe more leverage to say, well, that's not coming with me because I wasn't aware of that, or that asset was hidden, I want part of that? How does that play into that process?
Yeah, well, it depends on what state you live in, because there are many different rules in different states. But generally speaking, if there is an asset or a debt of the marriage, it will be something that the court can consider how it should be divided. So if, for example, there's a $50,000 credit card debt, but the expenses on those credit card were for family vacation or for food or for just general living expenses, then you know what? That is something that perhaps both spouses should be responsible to pay down. If the $50,000 debt was, for, let's say, a car that the other spouse didn't know about, that's housed in a garage somewhere,
or an addiction,
that shouldn't be something that should be shared equally.
Yeah.
So it, again, no two cases are the same. I have so many clients who come in and say, well, my neighbor's divorce went like this. Or, my brother-in-law said this. And I always say to them, don't do that. Don't talk to other people about their specific experiences, because I've been doing this for 30 years and I can promise you, no two cases are the same.
Or alike. I was going to say.
They just aren't. So it's very important that you get to know your divorce lawyer, that you're comfortable with your divorce lawyer, so that you tell them all of the details, even something you don't think is important. It might resonate with the lawyer, who could then make an argument. For example, you shouldn't be responsible for the debt, or whatever it is. The facts and the details of every case are critical.
If you just tuned in, we're on our second part of our 12-part series, Mapping Your New Path Forward, with attorney Melissa Needle. We're talking about what is a divorce, the 3 buckets of divorce, and now we're about to dive into alimony and child support.
Yes, that's really a function of income, and that's the third bucket. How will we divide the income? And, nowadays it's very common where both spouses are working. And if that's the case, then, if the incomes are fairly equal and the kids are spending an equal amount of time at homes, perhaps there won't be child support or alimony. Sometimes you have a situation where one spouse was the wage earner throughout the marriage and the other spouse stepped back from their career to raise the children and, manage the household. And in those situations, alimony and child support would be payable. And the question then becomes, how much for how long? And child support is different in every state. I know the state that I practice in Connecticut, child support will go to age 18. That is when the law in Connecticut considers that children have reached the age of majority, 18 or graduation from high school, whatever comes second, okay? So if your child is 17 when they graduate from high school, child support will continue until they turn 18, and vice versa. If your child turns 18 and is a senior in high school, child support will continue until that child graduates from high school. That is how it's done in Connecticut. There are some states, I think I mentioned earlier, where child support will continue until age 21.
I always thought that was so much, but I don't mean to interrupt. I always thought that was so much better. 18, they first of all, when they go to college, they still come home for the holidays. They still come home. They still live with you. You still have to support them.
Yeah, they're really not independent. And I tell people who make that comment to me, and believe me, I have had a lot of clients who have made that comment. Then if that's the way you feel, you should take it up with the state legislature, because maybe you want them to change the law. But in Connecticut, at least, that is the law. And I look, personally, I agree with you. I have children who are a little bit older than 18, and they're in school. They're not working.
Right.
They don't have independent financial resources to really support themselves. But again, not something that that can be ordered by the court. And most people won't agree to pay it longer. They might do it voluntarily, and many people do it voluntarily.
Well, so what it seems like shifting over to alimony, it's such a, I think a lot of times it's regarded as a bad word, and it's like, what's the least amount that I can do over what period of time? But I think a lot of times I'd like to get your view on it. I feel like a lot of times we go into it kind of being short-sighted, not thinking about if one of the partners in the marriage compromised a career, what opportunity they lost over that period of time to enable someone else to enhance their career. And so I think a lot of times, maybe because there's the contentiousness of the divorce, or because it's a very emotional period, people aren't thinking of the entire spectrum of the marriage and what was given and what was compromised. I'd love to get your view on just alimony in general and how people should view that as they're going into a divorce process.
Yeah, I've been practicing for 30 years, and I will tell you that over that time period, I think that the idea of alimony has shifted. Okay. And the reason I say that is because so many women work now, and it's not an unusual thing for a woman to have a career and to earn income. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have sacrificed their careers and earning income for family reasons. That's what they decided to do. They thought that, being present in the children's lives and, managing the home, if a spouse had a high pressure job and earned enough income to support the family, those were the decisions that they made. And what I have found as of late is, because there are so many women in the workforce, that those spouses, in particular women, sometimes men, but in particular women who have taken a step back from their career, it is now expected that they can reinvent themselves and get out in the workforce. And it can be very scary. Because it's not so easy, especially, if you're, in your mid 40s or older. There's a lot of young women out there who are killing it and crushing it, and to compete with them, especially with advances in technology, it can be challenging. But I will tell you that the expectation that I have experienced of late is that there will be a shorter term of alimony, so that a spouse or a woman can rehabilitate herself, reinvent herself, and figure out what her next path will be. That being said, you need to make sure that you hire a good lawyer, because that it all sounds very idyllic. Yes, I'll reinvent myself. But the reality is, if you're 45 years old and, you take 5 years to reinvent yourself, then you're 50 years old. And it can be a challenge to really
Oh, yeah.
earn income to support yourself. So I am, at Needle Cuda, we're very cognizant of that. And I think it's very critical that if you have sacrificed a lot in your career, or even if you haven't, given where you are in your life, you might have to fight hard to get enough alimony to make sure that you are supported, for the rest of your life, really. And it can be a challenge. And I really do believe that the perception and outlook has changed over the last, 20 years.
That's good news.
Yeah.
It's very good news.
So,
and I think everybody has to have a reset in terms of the type of lifestyle, that maintaining a lifestyle that you had in a marriage post marriage is challenging. I think a lot of people have grandeur ideals that, well, I'm going to continue to maintain the same lifestyle, and the fact of the matter is, for both parties, that's probably not the case. And you need a good reset, and I assume a good attorney kind of provides that reset to say, hey, look, you have a new reality here now.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if you think about it, you have the same amount of money coming in, and now you have 2 households to support. Okay. And clearly your lifestyle is going to change. There are very few people who continue to maintain an identical lifestyle after divorce. Again, one income supporting one family is very different than one income supporting 2 families and 2 households. It just is. Even if one of the spouses goes back to work, it usually is not on a level that is equal to the income that the spouse who was working during the course of the marriage had. So, it's challenging. The income coming in typically is the same, and now you have 2 households to support. So, yes, lifestyle is going to change. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're doing it for a reason. You want to be happy. You want to have a better life, and it's just not working. And so you have to, I don't know, for me, reflecting back, I mean, it gave me a total mind shift on what was important to me. And what was important to me was my mental health, my happiness, my kids' happiness, and less so on the lifestyle that I was living at the time when I was unhappy. And I think it's important to remember that you can have an incredible life and not live at the lifestyle that you lived as a couple post divorce.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. You're still going to be happy. You're going to find yourself. You're going to find ways to make it work. And you have to expect that your lifestyle will change. It doesn't mean it's going to be worse. It's just going to be different.
Yeah.
I like that your guidance, it seems like your guidance is so focused on help, not just the legal aspect of it, but also helping your clients through this, because none of it's easy, period.
No, none of it's easy. And that's something that we really pride ourselves with at Needle Cuda. We like our clients. We really want to help them. We have a lot of experience with divorce, with the process, with the emotional piece of it. And so we want our clients to be satisfied. They might not be happy. I mean, divorce is not a happy thing,
right,
but we really want them to understand all of the decisions that they've made as they're going through the process, so they know how they got to where they are. at the end of the process. And, that's really important to me.
That's also why it's so important to hire the right divorce attorney in the first place.
Yes, agreed. I always say that. So it's a critical decision.
Daniel, any last minute thoughts? This was a great segment, the 3 buckets of divorce. I think it's so important. The kids, the legal, the physical, the assets, and then the income, alimony, and child support. Really important for everyone to know about this.
Yes. Yeah. So I hope it helps a lot of people out there.
One step at a time, right? Divorce isn't easy. No 2 divorces are the same. So don't compare. Another piece of advice you gave, don't compare your divorce with him or her or this one, because everyone's going to be different.
That I say all the time. Every divorce is different. There are no 2 that are the same.
I'm sure your clients come in, they go, well, he got this and she got this. And you're like, hold on.
You probably have like a scar on your lip from having to bite from laughing or smirking.
Exactly. And I get it. Clients are scared. They're nervous. They want to make sure that they're getting the best deal possible. So, I think that I'm patient and I understand why they're saying that. And I think when I say to them, I point out, the differences between their situation and their neighbor's situation, then they say, oh, okay, I get it. So.
Makes a big difference. Coming up next in our 3rd part series next month, we'll be talking about getting started with your attorney. So that's going to be a lot of good advice and interesting stuff coming up too. Melissa, thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Always
thank you. This is great.
You guys.
We'll see you soon. We'll see you next month. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Needle Cuda Divorce and Family Law is an incredible resource for divorce and family law matters. Simply put, Needle Cuda is in the business of moving lives forward. Client reviews are everything, right? Well, listen to this. The American Institute of Family Law Attorneys named Needle Cuda their top 10 family law firm for client satisfaction for the past 4 years. That's huge. Managing partner, attorney Melissa Needle, has practiced family law for over 30 years. She has navigated hundreds of Connecticut clients through their personal divorce journey. Every story and experience is unique. Melissa shares her wisdom, learnings, and practical tips about divorce each month in our interview series called Mapping Your New Path Forward with attorney Melissa Needle. Melissa has built a reputation in Lower Fairfield County from Greenwich to Westport as an attorney who is forceful but fair. Her firm handles high net worth cases layered with contested custody and complex property division. We're so lucky to have her on Mapping Your New Path Forward with Melissa Needle. Tune in for Melissa's episodes and visit needlecuda.com. That's needle like the sewing needle, Cuda spelled CUDA.com, needlecuda.com.
Mom, Dad, you should shop Amazon for back to school and save some money. See, I'm currently obsessed with superheroes and need all the superhero stuff. Superhero lunchbox, superhero backpack. But next year, it'll be something else. Maybe dinosaurs? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. But I can tell you not to spend a fortune and shop low prices for school on Amazon. Okay, good chat. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Let's face it, shopping for a used car isn't always a positive experience. But that is about to change. Honda is bringing the plus side to used car buying with Honda True Used. Shop from a selection of vehicles up to 10 years old. Plus, get a Honda-backed limited warranty and other premium benefits. Learn more online or at your local Honda dealer and discover the better way to buy used with Honda True Used.